Pavi, thank you for joining me today on the Deep Dive.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just dive right in. So, with almost 3 decades in the business, you are now seeing AI create both excitement and uncertainty in the insight space. Can you walk me through what you believe is fundamentally missing in how organizations are approaching AI in market research today?
Sure. I feel what's happening is it's almost like a dichotomy at the same time. On one side of the house, you've got, I'll call it the FOMO, the fear of missing out of AI, that is driving a lot of this adoption because people are feeling like, oh my God, I don't want to be the CMO or the CEO on whose watch we got left behind. And so there's a lot of pressure for let's go do this. And, I've heard this is a new approach. At the same time, there is almost, I will call this as JOMO. There's another kind of a group, which is the joy of missing out, or maybe the complaining of missing out, because there's people who are saying, this isn't it. And, there's many things here, and let's tell you why this doesn't work. And no matter what you're hearing, Mr. CEO or Miss CEO or CMO, here are the issues or the challenges with this. So I think what is missing is this kind of trying to find the balance in this kind of a very rapid adoption moment that we are in, where sometimes it feels it's too fast and sometimes it feels it's too slow, but what we're missing is the balance.
I can pretty much just see everyone's head nodding along. I think you described it so perfectly. So how can we be more intentional about how we leverage AI? And can you describe the framework that you use for how insight professionals should think about prioritizing AI applications versus human-led research?
Yeah, I think the entire focus that I like to think about is, again, it's about finding that balance, right? And so for that balance, the first question is, what are you solving for as far as the business is concerned? So it has to be business first, not tech or platform first. And the moment you do that, then we need to have some kind of a framework to say, when will I use this or when will I not use this, and when it is most appropriate. So the way I like to think about it is like a 2x2 framework. And if you think about the x-axis, you've got the known going to the unknown, and the y-axis goes from the intuitive to the counterintuitive.
Okay.
So if you think about these 4 quadrants, the bottom left quadrant sits in what is known and what's intuitive.
Yep.
And this area requires a lot of work to still be done. And it might be puzzling, saying, I already know this and it's already intuitive, why do I need it? But businesses and organizations need it because sometimes they need quantification of the facts.
Sure.
Sometimes they need further validation of the facts. Sometimes they need validation of the rate of change. And so there's a lot of work that people are doing in this, what I call as a validatory space. So that validation insights is where I feel AI can immediately play a massive role, right? And if we can try to kind of start looking at those business problems we are solving and put it in perspective of where are we, which part of that quadrant is that solution going to lie in, then we can be purposeful about when do we use and when do we not use AI, and or how can we use it to augment what we are doing.
So if you're trying to make a decision based off the known and the intuitive, but it's a big decision, is that still something that AI can tackle for you? Is that pushing you further out the axes to where you need to tread lightly?
Yes, I think, so there's one part to this framework, which is whatever insight that you get has to be true, right? Because if it's not true, it's not an insight.
That would be good.
Yes. So that's where I think the moment you start going into the other parts of the other quadrants, which is kind of unknown and counterintuitive, today, by definition, how AI has been built, especially Gen AI, when you're training based on existing information and knowledge, it's unless you're kind of playing with the temperature of the model, which means you're actually compromising with the truth or the veracity, means that it's not highly likely that you're going to be very accurate with AI alone, right? And so that is where I feel if AI can start playing a bigger role in validation, what it can do, and this is where it kind of augments us as humans, it starts freeing up our time to actually take more time to do the unknown and the counterintuitive, which requires that level of deep dive and commitment, going into the dive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So can you give us a concrete example of how AI frees up resources in that space and allows teams to focus on the innovation and the unknown and the counterintuitive?
Yeah. See, I attended a Gartner conference some time ago, and there they talked about, like, as AI keeps coming in, there's going to be productivity gains, right? People are going to have more time, and, and they had this concept of which I really liked. They had this concept of, they call it cannot be a coffee break, right? So if you have more time, will you just go and have another coffee, right?
Yeah.
Frankly, I feel like that's okay as well, because if you go and have that coffee, maybe it'll give you the moment to reflect. Maybe it gives you the moment to like think and
Yeah.
get your concentration and focus back. So again, I think this is where, as we continue to think about how do we leverage AI to do more about that validation piece, it's really about the quality of time that you're going to give to the people who are actually diagnosing that information and who are connecting the dots to go to that unknown and the counterintuitive. So I don't have ready examples,
Yeah.
because this is literally a framework that we are now working with. But I think that's where the emphasis and effort is, that how do we now start leveraging more of our time, because that the validation stage can be much faster.
Yes.
And it can be more rapid. That kind of a digital FTE, if you may, is smarter than us, because they don't even forget, and you can quantify it. But then, how do you get the people side of it to start, asking those intelligent questions, the curious pieces, to start interrogating the unknown and the counterintuitive?
Yeah. And I think the way you finish that thought about digital FTEs removes the fear from that, because that can be scary. But then you talk about you can do that work, but there's still human work, the higher order work that we still need people to do.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And I feel if you now start thinking about even the unknown and the counterintuitive, one place, and I haven't done this as yet, but it's kind of just at a conceptual idea, is maybe the AI, now you dial up the temperature or dial down, I don't remember, I think it's dial up the temperature and allow it to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
Maybe it can help us with hypothesis generation. And that could be another way to kind of complement where humans are going. It's like, okay, kind of, we don't know if it's the truth or not, but here are the potential things
what it
that could
comes
be
up
going
with.
on. And so now you go and say, okay, how do I connect the dots with other pieces of information? Or if I need more primary work to be done now,
Yeah.
or secondary work, to then figure out, is that hypothesis actually a hypothesis, or is it an insight?
Yeah, yeah. How does what you're describing jive with the traditional skill set of an insights professional? So if typically we've spent a lot of time in that known intuitive quadrant, and now we're saying the people need to be in the other three,
Yes, the other
is that the
quadrants.
same skill set?
It's a good question. I don't think it's a different skill set. I think the basic, kind of almost wake up or reminder that we need to give to people, because sometimes they are so bogged down in doing the validation,
Yeah.
that they've almost started stifling their curiosity. So I think like that they have the skill, and that's why they get into this space in the first place.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is we need to reinvigorate that skill.
Yeah.
And we need to re-emphasize the piece around curiosity, and then also build the confidence around you're going to have more time to go and test this out and figure out what's going on. So the skill set won't be different, but the mindset is different, right? And so it's like, how do you get them to accept and understand that this actually is a change for good?
Yeah.
Because it's getting you out of like that, almost like the boring validation work where you're like, I already know it, and there's no big aha of that satisfaction of what I got.
Yeah.
And therefore, let the machine do that, let the models do that. You go and do the stuff that actually gives you the joy.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very optimistic and inspiring view to give back the fun of insights rather than the pranking.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. So you estimate that 70 to 80% of insights efforts are currently on the known and the validation. So what would the ideal balance look like? And what specific capabilities would teams need to develop to work effectively in those higher quadrants?
Yeah, it's difficult to say what should the balance look like. Surely it should be far less than 70,
70,
80%, right? But I think, again, before we think about how is this going to shift or what are the percentages, the reminder we need to give ourselves is like, what are we trying to solve for? Where is the business? What are the biggest challenges or opportunities that we have? And If it's a steady state business and very mature category, then maybe validation continues to have more emphasis and force. But if it is a business which is getting rapidly disrupted and or it's still at a nascent stage in its maturity curve, maybe there is more of that unknown and more of the counterintuitive. So I think some of that will get decided there. What's the ideal balance? Like, is it 50-50? Is it like 25? Like, flip it around. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel, again, it's like reminding ourselves where's the business focus and emphasis.
Yeah, the business context should dictate the work that you're doing and the decisions you're making. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you have led functional teams through significant transformations. When it comes to this shift from technology-led to human-led AI adoption, what do leaders get wrong? And what should they be doing differently to drive real change?
Yeah. I think it's, again, finding the right mix. Typically, and I think organizations they're much more conscious of this now than they were even 6 months ago. That's the rapid pace of change that is going on today. There was almost like 70-80% focus or emphasis was on the model or the technology. Maybe 20% focus was on the platform, and if you're lucky, 10% focus was on the people, the human, the softer side of it, and the change management, right? And I have seen this, again, working with the teams, is many times if that continues to be the emphasis, then you're not really setting yourself up for success, because you're not understanding and appreciating the barriers and the motivations to change, because you're being more tech and platform led rather than people led, right? So it's like, how do you flip this around and make that change more about understanding the softer nuances of how do people connect? Why are they, what is the process that you're using versus the process you're offering to them? And, why are they embracing this or not embracing this, and what can make them change, because that rate of adoption might not be proportionate to the investment that you're making over there. So if we make that flip, that is the biggest change I would recommend, right? Which is like, how do we consciously think about change management, and don't think about it last, but actually think about it first. So what's the process? What's the human being who's doing that process? And what do they like or dislike about that process? And the more you can understand that, the better you will be set up for. And don't get me wrong, the technology and platform is important, and it does need to deliver, but it needs to be in service of everything else in terms of the human being.
I want to come back to the platform piece, but stay with the people, because people don't like change, and this is a huge change. So I very much agree with you that has to take most of the focus. I wonder, could you share some of what you've experienced in leading people through this and how they react?
There are different people would be in different stages of, like, almost archetypes of how are they, when I was back in the day, when I was on the agency side, we would do like forecasting or bases type of researches. It was micro tested, what it was called at Kantar. And there you would try to understand what is the risk profile of people. Do they try new things in general or they don't? Right? And again, there is a financial risk, there's a social risk, there is a physical risk of trying something new. And you would try to understand where are they on that spectrum of kind of risk that they would take. So I think we need to apply some of those principles to understand where are different, like we need to know that not everybody will be on the same page. And you would already see that with any of these tools coming in, there'll be some people who are very early adopters and they're actually like jump in, plunge straight in, and then some others who are waiting to see how this pans out, and many more others who still wait longer, right? So then the solutions also need to be fitted that way, right? So as you're thinking about people, you need to almost see what are those archetypes of people who are going to embrace or not embrace, and therefore what are the motivators or barriers which are either fueling or stopping them from making this change. Again, it needs to recognize where they are and then see how you're going to change them, versus let's have one solution which is going to work for everybody.
I think that's very insightful, and I think that is why change is hard for people. You have to understand what it is they're holding on to and why, before you can try to lead them to whatever the new thing is and make it feel okay to them. I think you described it.
I think it needs to be a mix of top down and bottom up, right? Because again, it's not one or the other. Again, there's a theme in everything I say. It's about balance, right? Because at the end of the day, if the C-suite, the CEO, the CMO comes and says like, go do this. We've
Yeah.
decided we're going to do this. There will be some change and people will say, let's do it. But then there will also be some resistance, either actively or passively, because they'll be like, we're being forced, we don't understand, why should we do this? And so that organic piece hasn't happened, right? But so therefore there needs to be some bottom up as well.
Yeah.
And like, how do you inspire people and say, or provoke them to make that change? But you need a mix of both, the top down and the bottom up.
I think the balance in all of your answers, a synonym for that is experience. Yeah. So given your experience and what you are seeing in the market with heavy investment in AI platforms, but limited ROI, what is a realistic timeline for this transformation? And what should leaders expect in terms of that resistance, adoption curves, and when you'll start seeing a meaningful return?
Yes. I worked with Johnson & Johnson a few years ago, many moons ago. And when I joined Johnson & Johnson, someone told me who was that time from the Johnson's consumer business. And I was just having my initial meet and greets. And she said, here in Johnson & Johnson, we have a lot about what we talk about Johnson's Baby, because there's so much pride about Johnson's Baby as a brand.
Yeah.
And our culture is about like, let's take baby steps. And that's a thought that's kind of always stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I think it's very appropriate for this kind of a journey and evolution we are in, as we think about how much time is it going to take and what's going to happen. And it's almost like, how do we be intentional, but also be by piece with like nothing's going to change overnight, and it's going to be small steps going in the right direction. And as you continue to make sure that those steps are in the right direction, then you feel happy with the progress you're making rather than making this amazing leapfrog in one go.
Yep. I love the baby analogy because, one, I'm a mom, but being a mom, there's two things I think with kids. One is when you're taking baby steps, you fall a lot, but they just get up. Like they just keep getting up and they learn a little bit. And then the other piece is there's a reward in it. They're learning something and there's something positive. So in each of those steps, there's something to entice you to go again.
Yeah, I think you built beautifully on that analogy, because I think that other piece with baby steps is there will be falls as well.
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of the learning process.
Yep.
So this means you need to buy peace with not everything you're going to do is going to be successful.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will fail.
Yep.
And if you fail, what's more important is what did you learn from it, rather than the fact that you just failed.
Yeah.
Right? And I think there was a paper published recently from MIT which talked about 95% of Gen AI is not working. And that became the headline and everybody like went crazy on that, right? And I'm like, okay, if it's not working, good news is it's failing means you got so much you can learn from.
Yep.
Right? So it doesn't mean it's not going to work. 5% is working.
Yep.
Like, did that happen with, other technology changes that came through? Like, who knows? Where's that normative database of that, right?
Yeah.
And so if 5% is changing, 95% is failing today, okay, put it in size and try to see what you can learn and what you can change rapidly and then deploy again.
Absolutely. The other thing about the baby steps, when you first said it, my mind went to a negative connotation in the sense of resistance to change, too slow to change. But it's actually quite the opposite. It's let's do this at the right pace. Let's learn as we go. Let's not be discouraged when we fail. It's actually different than where I went immediately, and I really like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being with me today on the deep dive. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Me too.